A 16-year-old girl on her first date vanished from a quiet suburban park in Ohio in 2018. Police said she likely ran away, teen nerves, bad decisions, nothing criminal. But there was no note, no digital trail, no history of rebellion. Then the case went cold. 3 years passed. Seasons buried memory. Until a park ranger repairing a washed-out trail struck something hard beneath the soil. Not rock, not trash. It was a backpack rotted, sealed, and hidden where no one should have been digging. Inside was something that shattered the runaway theory forever. The last thing her mother noticed was the bedroom light. It was still on at midnight, glowing faintly through the hallway like a mistake that hadn't been corrected yet. By then, the house was quiet in the way only worried houses are. No television, no music, no footsteps, just the low hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock, counting minutes that shouldn't matter, but suddenly did. 16-year-old Emily Carter had never missed curfew before. Earlier that evening, the mood had been lighter, nervous, even sweet. Emily stood in the kitchen, smoothing the hem of her jacket, checking her phone again and again as if it might suddenly give her permission to leave. "You've got your phone charged?" her dad asked, trying to sound casual and failing. "Yes," Emily smiled, rolling her eyes. "Dad, I'll text." Her mom leaned against the counter, watching her daughter the way parents do when they know a moment matters but don't know why. "Just be careful. First dates don't have to be perfect." Emily laughed. "It's just a walk. We're meeting at Riverside Park. Everyone goes there." Riverside Park sat less than a mile from their home, a stretch of trees, walking paths, and a shallow creek that locals treated like a backyard. Safe, familiar, ordinary. Emily stepped outside at 7:12 p.m. She sent a text at 7:28. "I'm here." That was the last message her parents would ever receive from her. At first, there was no panic. 8 o'clock passed, then 9. Her mom checked her phone, expecting a quick update. Nothing. By 10, her dad stepped outside, scanning the street as if Emily might simply materialize at the corner, apologetic and late. "Probably just talking," he said, but his voice didn't believe it. At 10:17 p.m., her mom called, straight to voicemail. That was when the air in the house changed. By 11, they were driving to the park, headlights cutting through the dark trails where teenagers sometimes lingered too long. The parking lot was nearly empty. No sign of Emily. No sign of the boy she was supposed to meet. Her mom walked the path calling her name, voice cracking, the sound swallowed by trees. Her dad checked the creek, the benches, the shadowed areas where the light poles didn't quite reach. Nothing. Police were called just after midnight. An officer took notes under a flickering streetlight, asking questions that felt too calm for what was happening. Did she ever talk about running away? No. Any trouble at home? Never. Any reason she wouldn't come back? Her mom shook her head so hard it hurt. She had school tomorrow, a math test she was nervous about. The officer nodded, writing anyway. By morning, searchlights swept the park. Dogs traced scents that led nowhere. Friends were questioned, including the boy from the date, nervous, cooperative, insistent that Emily never showed up. "She texted me she was there," he said, hands shaking. "I waited like 20 minutes. 20 minutes. An entire disappearance folded into less than half an hour. Emily's backpack was still in her room, her wallet untouched, her bed unmade in a way that suggested she'd be back. But the bedroom light was still on. By dawn, the word everyone avoided finally surfaced, heavy and sharp. Vanished. And as the sun rose over Riverside Park, casting light on paths that had already forgotten her footsteps, one terrifying truth settled in the night. Emily didn't come home, wasn't a delay. It was the beginning of something far worse. And somewhere in that quiet park, something had already been hidden, waiting to be found years later. By the second morning, the word runaway was already floating through the police station. It was never said cruelly, never loudly. It appeared in the careful language officers used when they thought parents needed realistic expectations. Teenagers leave. Teenagers lie. Teenagers panic after first dates. It was easier for everyone to believe Emily Carter had simply chosen not to come home. Detective Mark Holloway stood in the Carter living room, notepad resting on his knee, eyes scanning the family photos lining the wall. Emily at age 6, missing 2 front teeth. Emily at 14, holding a science fair ribbon. Emily last summer smiling into the sun. Sometimes, he said gently, kids get overwhelmed. They take off for a bit. Emily's mother felt something sharp rise in her chest. She didn't even pack a toothbrush. The detective paused, pen hovering. Has she ever talked about wanting to leave? No, her father said, firmer than he intended. She talked about college, about getting a car. She was afraid of disappointing people, not running away from them. Still, the theory stuck. Emily's phone records showed nothing unusual, no secret contacts, no sudden flurry of messages hinting at escape. Her bank account remained untouched. Her social media stayed silent, frozen mid-teenage life. But absence, the police said, wasn't evidence of foul play. At Riverside Park, officers walked the paths again, slower this time, more procedural. The creek was shallow, barely ankle-deep. There were no torn clothes, no signs of a struggle. No witnesses who had seen anything after sunset. Too clean. A volunteer searcher, a retired firefighter, mentioned something that lingered uncomfortably. If she'd fallen or gotten hurt, he said quietly, we'd have found something by now. But the official notes didn't reflect that unease. At school, Emily's locker was sealed. Her desk sat empty. Friends whispered theories that shifted daily. Maybe she met someone else. Maybe she got scared. Maybe she was hiding out and would come back once the attention faded. Her best friend, Lily, sat through an interview gripping a tissue until it tore. She was excited, Lily said. She kept asking if she looked stupid. Emily didn't disappear when she was happy. One detail bothered Lily deeply. Emily had told her she planned to walk only the main loop of the park, the well-lit path by the water. She hated the wooded trail. Said it felt wrong. When Lily mentioned this to police, it was written down, then quietly buried beneath assumptions. After 72 hours, the search scaled back. Helicopters left. Volunteers returned to their lives. The Carter family stayed. At night, Emily's mother replayed the same questions until they lost meaning. Why didn't she call? Why didn't she scream? Why was there nothing? Her father drove the route to the park again and again, parking where Emily should have been, staring at the trees as if they might confess. Detective Holloway filed the case under missing juvenile. Not abduction, not homicide, not yet. It doesn't mean we stop looking, he told them. But everyone in the room understood what it really meant. Cases like this didn't get urgency. They got time. And time was the one thing Emily didn't seem to have. 3 weeks later, a quiet sentence appeared in the internal report. No evidence of criminal activity at this time. For Emily's parents, that sentence was devastating not because it explained anything, but because it erased the possibility that someone else was responsible. Because if no one took her, then where did she go? And why did Riverside Park, even in daylight, still feel like it was keeping a secret? By the 4th day, Riverside Park no longer felt like a place people visited. It felt like a crime scene pretending not to be one. Yellow tape fluttered lazily at the trail entrances, more symbolic than restrictive. Volunteers moved in uneven lines through the trees, boots crunching leaves that were already starting to forget the shape of Emily Carter's footsteps. Search dogs pulled against their handlers, confused by overlapping scents, joggers, dog walkers, teenagers who had passed through after the fact, unknowingly erasing whatever trace might have remained. Emily's father joined every search group that would have him. He memorized the terrain the way a man memorizes a face he fears he'll never see again. The curve of the creek, the fallen oak near the north trail, the narrow slope behind the maintenance shed where the light didn't reach after dusk. "Did you check down there?" he kept asking, pointing. "Yes," they would answer. Sometimes they were lying. Sometimes they truly believed it. Her mother stayed closer to the command post, gripping a thermos she never drank from, answering the same questions from reporters who promised sensitivity and delivered speculation. Any new leads? No. Any suspects? No. Do you believe she's still alive? That question hollowed her out every time. On the fifth day, a K-9 unit caught something Emily's scent, trailing briefly toward the wooded section she was said to avoid. For a moment, hope surged. Officers followed the path, hearts racing, cameras clicking. The trail ended abruptly near a service road. No footprints beyond it, no sign she crossed, just absence. "That doesn't make sense," one handler muttered. "People don't evaporate." But cases did. Behind the scenes, resources were already being redirected. A missing teenager with no signs of violence didn't compete with fresh crimes. Tips came in, hundreds of them. Most were useless. A girl who looked similar at a bus station 2 towns over. A blurry photo from a gas station camera that turned out to be someone else's daughter. Then there were the whispers. A local man with a record. A van seen once, maybe. A scream someone thought they heard but couldn't place in time or location. None of it solid enough to move the needle. Emily's best friend Lily began avoiding the park entirely. "It feels wrong," she told her mom. "Like it's watching," one detective quietly agreed. Mark Holloway drove through Riverside Park late one evening, long after official searches had paused for the night. He parked near the maintenance area and walked alone. Flashlight beams slicing through darkness. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, only that something about the case refused to settle. Near the edge of the woods, he noticed disturbed ground by an old trail marker. Nothing dramatic, just uneven soil, slightly sunken, as if rain had collapsed something beneath it. He made a note. Then he let it go. Weeks passed. The tape came down. The command post vanished. Emily's face remained on flyers that curled and faded in the sun. At home, her room stayed exactly the same. Her mother washed the same load of laundry again and again, unable to let time move forward without her daughter's permission. Her father stopped searching the park, but not because he believed Emily was gone. Because he believed someone wanted her to stay unfound. The case status changed quietly. Active investigation became ongoing. Ongoing became pending leads. The phones stopped ringing. Riverside Park returned to normal. Children played near the creek. Couples walked hand in hand, where Emily had last stood texting, "I'm here." But for those who had searched long enough, the park never quite gave back the peace it had taken. Because beneath the soil, beneath roots and seasons and silence, something was still there, waiting. And 3 years later, when rain and erosion finally shifted the ground enough, it would refuse to stay hidden any longer. Time did not heal the Carter house. It simply hollowed it out. 3 years after Emily vanished, her bedroom door was still closed, the way it had been left the night she didn't come home. Dust settled on trophies and photo frames. Clothes hung untouched in the closet, smelling faintly of detergent and something softer memory maybe. Her parents learned to live around the absence, careful not to disturb it, as if moving on might erase her entirely. In town, people stopped saying her name out loud. Riverside Park changed with the seasons. Trails eroded, trees fell and were cleared. New benches were installed, where old ones had rotted away. Teenagers still came at night, unaware or unwilling to know that the ground beneath their feet once swallowed a girl whole. Detective Mark Holloway was no longer assigned to missing persons, but Emily's file stayed in his desk drawer. Every few months he pulled it out, flipping through reports that said the same thing in different ways. No evidence, no witnesses, no answers. The note about the disturbed soil by the trail marker was still there. He hated that note. Across town, Lily graduated high school. She almost didn't walk the stage. Survivor's guilt clung to her like a second skin. She still dreamed of Emily standing at the edge of the park, waving, trying to say something Lily couldn't hear. "I should have gone with her," Lily whispered once, alone in her room. "I should have been there." The community moved on because communities always do, but not everyone forgot. Caleb Turner had worked as a park ranger at Riverside for over a decade. He knew the land better than most, where the creek flooded first, which trees were unstable, which trails were slowly being eaten by rain and time. In the spring of the 3rd year, heavy storms battered the area for days, washing out parts of the lower paths near the wooded section most people avoided. Caleb was assigned to assess damage. It was routine work: shovel, boots, clipboard, silence broken only by birds and the distant rush of water. Near an old trail marker, half-rotted, barely legible, he noticed the ground had sunk unnaturally. Soil collapsed inward, forming a shallow depression that didn't match the surrounding terrain. It wasn't dramatic. Just wrong. "Damn floods," he muttered, pressing his boot into the earth. It gave slightly beneath him. Caleb knelt and began digging, expecting to uncover a broken pipe or buried debris left behind from some long-forgotten maintenance job. His shovel struck something solid with a dull, hollow sound. Plastic. Not rock. He froze. Rangers found trash buried all the time: coolers, bags, even old tents. Still, something about the location bothered him. Too far from picnic areas. Too deliberate. He dug slower now, hands shaking just enough to notice. The edge of a fabric strap emerged, darkened by moisture and time. A backpack. Caleb sat back on his heels, heart pounding. He didn't open it. Training kicked in. He marked the location, stepped away, and called it in. Within an hour, police tape returned to Riverside Park for the first time in years. Detective Holloway arrived just as the bag was carefully lifted from the soil. The zipper was fused shut with dirt and rust. The fabric was faded but intact. He recognized it instantly. Emily Carter's backpack had been purple once. Now it was the color of grief. As officers exchanged looks that needed no words, Holloway felt the old weight settle back into his chest. The note in his drawer burned in his memory. Disturbed soil. Ignored. The runaway theory died right there in the dirt. Because someone hadn't just taken Emily, they had hidden her. And as the bag was sealed into evidence, one question echoed louder than any other. If this was here the whole time, what else had the park been keeping silent? The smell came first. When technicians finally opened Emily Carter's backpack inside a sealed evidence room, the air shifted stale, sour, unmistakably old. 3 years underground had preserved more than fabric. It had preserved intent. Detective Mark Holloway stood with his arms folded, jaw tight, as gloved hands eased the zipper apart millimeter by millimeter. No one spoke. Even seasoned officers understood that moments like this demanded silence. Inside were items no runaway would abandon. Emily's phone cracked, dead, wrapped in a faded hoodie. Her journal, pages warped but legible in places. A single shoe. Her mother would later scream when she heard about the shoe. Not cry, scream, because shoes didn't get buried unless someone wanted them gone. Forensics worked carefully, cataloging fibers, soil samples, trace evidence trapped in seams and corners. The phone, miraculously, yielded fragments, location pings cut short near the wooded trail. Emily had sworn she wouldn't walk. The very place Lily had warned them about. The investigation reopened overnight. Old interviews were dragged back into the light. The boy from the date sat across from detectives again, older now, more composed, but his story hadn't aged well. Timeline inconsistencies surfaced. Texts deleted and later recovered suggested pressure Emily never mentioned to anyone else. She said she felt weird, Lily told police, voice shaking, like she didn't want to hurt his feelings. Search teams returned to the site where the backpack was found, expanding the dig radius inch by inch. Cadaver dogs alerted nearby twice. Soil was removed, roots cut back. What they uncovered wasn't a full grave, but it was worse. Fragments of fabric. A broken necklace Emily wore every day. And beneath it all, disturbed earth shaped by hurried hands. The conclusion was unavoidable. Emily had never left the park. The official theory shifted violently from runaway to concealed homicide. Media descended again, this time angrier. Questions turned sharp. How was this missed? How did 3 years pass while evidence sat underground, less than a mile from her home? Holloway didn't sleep for days. In a quiet moment, standing alone at the edge of the dig site, he stared at the ground and whispered, "I'm sorry." The truth, when it emerged, was smaller and uglier than anyone expected. No stranger. No Ven. No elaborate plot. Just a boy who panicked. A rejection he couldn't accept. A moment that spiraled beyond control. Confronted with mounting evidence, he broke. "It was an accident," he said, voice flat, eyes empty. She slipped. She hit her head. I didn't mean to. But accidents didn't involve burial. Accidents didn't involve silence. Emily's remains were never fully recovered. Time, water, and earth had taken much of her back. What was found was enough. Enough to lay her to rest. Enough to tell the truth. At the memorial, Riverside Park was quiet again, but not peacefully so. Her parents stood holding each other, staring at the trees that had watched everything, and said nothing. Lily placed the recovered necklace at the base of a marker, fingers trembling. I found you, she whispered. You weren't forgotten. Years later, hikers still report an unease near that old trail marker. Rangers say nothing grows quite right there anymore. The soil settles strangely after rain, as if remembering. Emily Carter didn't vanish because she wanted to disappear. She vanished because someone believed burying the truth would make it go away. But the ground has a memory. And eventually, it gives everything back. The park reopened quietly. No ceremony. No announcement. Just the slow return of joggers, dog walkers, and families who pretended the ground beneath them had never swallowed a secret for 3 years. Riverside Park looked the same, but it wasn't. For Emily Carter's parents, life divided itself into 2 versions, before the backpack and after the truth. Before, there had been a fragile hope, irrational, painful, but alive. After, there was certainty, and certainty, they learned, could hurt more than not knowing. The funeral was closed casket. There wasn't enough left of Emily to say goodbye the way they had imagined during all those sleepless nights. Her mother placed a photo on top instead, Emily, laughing, head tilted back, unaware of the future waiting for her. She deserved more time, her father said quietly to Detective Holloway afterward. It wasn't an accusation, just a fact. The boy responsible accepted a plea deal. The word accident was never used again in court. Prosecutors were careful, deliberate. Panic didn't bury evidence. Fear didn't erase 3 years of silence. When the sentence was read, Emily's mother didn't look at him. She stared straight ahead, hands folded, as if she were holding something fragile that might break if she moved. Lily visited the park once more before leaving for college. She stood near the old trail marker, the one that had been replaced after the excavation, and listened to the wind move through the trees. I tried to tell them, she whispered. I tried. Grief, she learned, wasn't just sadness. It was weight. Something you carried forward, shaping who you became. Detective Holloway finally closed the file. He didn't celebrate. He didn't feel relief. Closure was a word people used when they wanted a clean ending. This case didn't have one. He still thought about the note in his drawer. Disturbed soil. Ignored. A decision that would follow him for the rest of his career. He requested a transfer soon after, not because he was running, but because he needed to remember why details mattered. Riverside Park added a small plaque near the main path. No cause of death, no details, just a name and a date. Emily Carter. Loved. Remembered. Visitors sometimes stop there without knowing why. They feel something unease, maybe. A heaviness that doesn't match the sunshine or birdsong. Rangers say the ground near the old marker still shifts after heavy rain. Soil sinks slightly, then settles again, like a breath being released. Stories circulate. Footsteps heard when no one is there. A phone vibrating with no signal. A girl-shaped shadow near the trees at dusk. Most dismiss it, but some don't. Because Emily didn't vanish into nothing. She vanished into assumption, into convenience, into the space created when the truth is too uncomfortable to pursue. And when the earth finally gave her back piece by piece, it reminded everyone of something simple and terrifying. Silence doesn't erase what happened. It only buries it. And sooner or later, the ground remembers,